All right, everybody, welcome back to Top 47 Keg Games. We're talking about Loom this episode. It was nominated by Evil Taco, or Evil...
No. This is a name from Finland, EVK Talo.
EVK Taco, okay, I like Evil Taco better, personally, but EVK Talo is great. Been around, listened to the show for a long time. This game was developed by LucasArts, published by LucasArts. For the, I guess probably would, I mean, it says PC on the thing, but I'm sure what we mean to say is like IBM DOS compatible, whatever it was back then.
Yeah, DOS, the Amiga, there was a couple other ports, you know.
Yeah,
so,
the Amiga version.
Earliest release date in territory appears to be May 1990, although who really knows, in the United States. And I remember this game because it was like one of those games that everybody had the floppy disk for, but I don't know anybody who finished it, actually.
Really? It's not that long a game.
Yeah, I mean,
it's not
I think
even supposed to be
tells you
difficult
something.
either.
Yeah,
No, I mean, I remember there was like one sticking point where I was trying to figure out this whole playing songs in reverse to have the reverse effect. And once I figured that out, I think it was like right after you leave the first island, and I was have to get past the twister in the ocean. And once I was past that, I just breezed through the rest of the game in the same day. And I was like 10 years old at the time.
I did actually find the first island, I think, is actually the trickiest part, as you try and figure out what the game how the logic of the game works. And once you get
because it is such a unique for a LucasArts adventure game and point-and-click adventure games generally. And it surprises me that there are so few other point-and-click adventure games that took its example, which is to not do inventory puzzles, where every single one is pick up a key to use in some variety of door, usually in some like really exotic kind of way. But instead you collect spells with very, very specific effects and have to get past obstacles by casting the right spell at them.
And it's a very musically themed game, right? Like,
yeah. You're this like I think you're in the Guild of Weavers or something, but except you can weave the fabric of reality because of the magical loom, and you play 4-note songs with your distaff, and that have specific effects. Like the first one you get is the open spell, I think.
Yeah.
Does anybody remember the tunes?
They're actually. I see we've got a PC speaker enthusiast in the house.
Yeah.
Can you give us an example maybe of the systems of the game? Like, so how do you close in this game?
Well, you open by going duh, 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 and you close a thing that you just opened by going duh. I mean, what I just did.
Duh.
Duh,
Reverse.
duh, duh, duh. Ugh, I can't even do it now.
Yeah.
I've confused myself.
We forgot to introduce ourselves. So now, after that stirring performance, who's with me to discuss this one?
I'm Kyle.
I'm Shoku.
And I'm Yahtzee.
So, yeah, I mean, this was like it's probably the highest concept of the LucasArts adventure games. Would you say?
Well, a lot of things are high concepts, if you, depending on how you describe it. I think Loom is one of those games that clearly has an incredible amount of world building going into it, which doesn't necessarily become a big part of the story.
Yeah, I'd say it's a tie between this and probably The Dig, which I think we've already ranked in like terms of like the stuff that Lucas. Well, now if you count Grim Fandango, I guess you got it. So,
actually, you find this a lot because it's in Day of the Tentacle's kind of interesting with its like time travel, like multiple people going through multiple places across like timelines or whatever. That's also pretty innovative for
this
like
truly was a golden age.
Yeah, I mean, LucasArts was always mixing it up a bit. A lot of other people tried to do point-click adventure games. They all just turned into sticking keys indoors the whole way. But LucasArts would always mix it up somehow.
Yeah, like, so this one, yeah, like, the replacement of the inventory system, essentially, is...
basically a reusable inventory, I guess. Your inventory is the spells. It's like an adventure game where you've got a crowbar and a rope and a saw, and you just use those over and over again.
And for some reason, the saw can unsaw things.
So you're not like King Graham. You're like, I'm going to use this rope to climb up this cliff, and then I'm going to leave the rope there because I'll never need a rope ever again for the rest of my life.
I guess there's sort of kind of like Metroidvania as well in a way.
Yeah, exactly.
It's picking up a new ability to open up new areas.
Yeah, but it actually lends itself pretty well to the adventure game, the point and click concept, because they are, after all, just puzzles.
You might have seen the packaging of the game with as like the gorgeous box art. But what people might not know is that it came with like a little sorcerer's manual where you wrote down the spells and the notes that you learned, and you wrote down the music notes, and that's how is like your companion to the game. Is really interesting.
Yeah, it was a nice take on the like traditional notes field of the the instruction manuals.
Also came with an audio prologue to the game, even though the game's quite a cold opening. There's like a whole prologue, like a drama on the cassette or something that it came with.
Yeah, I've never heard that, and I guess it didn't need it because I got the story regardless.
It seems to give like just a little bit more backstory on the stuff that it immediately tells you, like straight away.
It's almost all backstory, Loom. The actual plot is you're a dude, you go somewhere, sort out a bad guy, find your mum, and save the universe. Okay, I guess there's a lot of plot.
Also, I mean, like, yeah, you're saving of the universe in this. But we won't go,
Yeah,
straight
things
out gaming, but-
escalate pretty quickly from save your mom to save the universe.
Yeah.
It's like,
It's
you got
it's
two things to do.
interesting,
I've got to save my mom, and I've got to rescue the universe.
But you really get a sense that all the places you go to has this incredibly lengthy history behind it.
I mean, that came from Brian Moriarty, right? Like he was kind of a fantasy style, like he was a writer because basically he did the Infocom like Wishmaster and some of the other like very lore rich games, and because this is a graphic adventure, it has all the lore, or it feels like all the lore is there, but you don't get given much of it.
That's kind of the secret of doing this kind of thing. It's like you hint at a lot more than you're ever going to show, and it like paints the picture in the mind's eye. Was that the same guy who did A Mind Forever Voyaging by chance?
I have no idea. I literally haven't.
Somebody listening at home, look that up.
That is an interesting game, though.
So what's really interesting to me, the game really has a poetic feel. Like there's this really intense feel of melancholy throughout the game. Like just with the opening, it really shows that he's a writer. Like it's not Monkey Island and you goof around or whatever. It's not Dave the Tentacle.
Yeah, it's a game about isolation, I think. It's about all these different isolated communities, and you, like, meeting up with them all for the first time in who knows how long, and ultimately discovering that the world can't go on like this. It's
oddly reminiscent of, well, not reminiscent because it happened way before, but Dragon Quest VII. Does anybody remember the plot of that game?
No.
I know. Okay, it's okay.
Yeah,
It's like the same. It's the same kind of thing where like you're your traditional like JRPG hero, but the whole idea is like you collect these kind of map fragments, and when you piece one together, you go back in time, and then you unlock an island that reappears in the regular world. And it's this idea of like all these communities that are isolated from each other. And then you're kind of like putting things back together, building the world back together, and people are like discovering, oh my god, there's like an island over there with people on it. And
why didn't you explain this to me before? That sounds actually really cool. I would have definitely checked that out.
I just picked it up.
Okay.
Like not 6 months ago. 4 months ago.
Okay, I understand.
It's a long game. I'm playing the 3DS version, which is a little bit truncated, but it's still a really long ass game.
It sounds convenient though. Yeah, like this one. Okay, so you're like this. You're an apprentice, right? So you don't actually know that much. You're this super isolated, like basically like kid who grew up on an island, and then you just have to go out and roam like the entire fantasy world. And what's really cool about this one is it doesn't feel like Token or a Toyken. Oh, good.
Well, you have to go out into the fantasy world because everyone else on your island turned into a swan.
Yeah, and that's so cool because I don't really have like a frame of like, it's like a new fairy tale kind of. I don't have like an obvious point of reference where I'm like, oh, they cribbed that from this fairy tale or they cribbed this from this fantasy author.
If you had to count the number of fairy tales where people are turned into animals, you would die before you finished. It's just a lot.
Can I mention the soundtrack? That's what gives it that fairy tale feel, I think. All that Swan Lake music going on in the background.
Yes, that always felt like a little bit like, okay, they all turn into swans, so all the music is from, like, a lot of the music's from Swan Lake. It's like, I see, that's
it's a bit
clever.
on the nose, isn't it?
Yeah.
It makes me want to go figure skating.
It does.
But I do like how it's like, it's so ambitious for a game of the time, right? Like, people used to make all these goofy, silly games, and this is a guy who's like making this sad story about a boy who lost his parents in a melancholic world with classical music. Like it's just so different.
How well known is Loom compared to other LucasArts adventures? I know there's a huge plug for it in The Secret of Monkey Island.
I get this feeling with Loom. It's I think the name is a very like it resonates very strongly with people because it's kind of this interesting name. Like it's just Loom.
I can tell you that in the States at the time, it was like an adventure game that everybody was aware of, but I didn't know anybody who actually finished it.
And a lot
And
of
that's weird because it's a short game, as you guys have pointed out. Like,
Yeah, it got a lot of crap at the time for being a short, easy game, which people at the time perceived as like no replay value and not interesting. But funnily enough, if you look at the games from like Telltale, it's basically the same format, like 3-hour game kind of thing. Everyone,
right. I mean, they do episodically, but yeah.
I find that really funny that when you look at this game and you look at the complaints, like, it's super easy, it's for babies, and this kind of thing, and then you go, well, yeah, but then the entire genre basically had cardiac arrest and died of, like, being just incredibly bloated and impossible.
Yeah.
Ahead of its time, really. You look at the Telltale adventure games and point-and-click adventure games these days, a lot of them just click on thing to continue.
Yeah, and the thing is, like, that is actually, I think, what lots of players just want from this kind of thing. Puzzles are great, especially when they actually feel like they're part of the world, and that's what works with Loom, is all of the puzzles aren't, because they're not inventory puzzles, because you're like, I will use my staff to change this gold into, hay. It's like, okay, well, that's a fantasy puzzle, it suits the universe, it suits little things I know about fairy tales.
And there's a story behind that spell as well. I mean, I think it says in the book you get in the package where you write down the notes in, gives a little backstory for why the spell was created and what guild created it and what problems it's caused in the past.
Is anybody gone on the record as to whether this game inspired Ocarina of Time at all?
I have to assume I wouldn't know. I don't believe they've actually said that it inspired it.
It's like it's not like an impossible thing to say that it could have not inspired it and it was just like a coincidence. But that is kind of the concept of using the ocarina. It's like you get these incredibly simple melodies and then they do stuff.
Oh wait, didn't Shoku asked us to watch the GDC presentation from Brian Moriarty. I think he actually drew a connection from Loom to Ocarina of Time in his presentation. He was just kind of like, hey, check this out. And then it was the ocarina being played compared to the distaff. And then he didn't really say anything about it. He just kind of like showed it and then just kept going on. So yeah, I think that there was at least a subtle maybe kind of thing going on. This was available in Japanese, and just in case it was a full Japanese release.
I don't know. Like, it's not the kind of thing that people are usually open about talking about, but I always wondered, like, whether that was, you could have had the idea without playing Loom. I'm not saying that it's definitely true. It just seems like it's possible.
So I want to echo, by the way, what Cal was saying of the GDC talk that the creator of the game, Brian Moriarty, gave, and why I recommended it. I think it's one of the most articulate takes on the game ever. And it's really cool to see the amount of effort and passion the guy had for his game, because it's such an alien concept to make a point-and-click game that's not funny, that's
not really much room for auteurism in games created these days, especially not in AAA sector.
Oh, absolutely not. No, like you've got once you go beyond the complexity of like Cave Story, which is already kind of pushing the limits of what I think a single person can do. Well, yeah, it doesn't really. So here's the other games Brian Moriarty did before Loom, which is his first LucasArts game. So he did Wishbringer, which we mentioned, Trinity, and I'm not sure we mentioned. These were Infocom games. Beyond Zork, which I think,
really,
yeah, which I think was was it the first Zork game that wasn't based on like the original MIT version? Or
if it wasn't, calling it Beyond Zork was a serious misstep.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember which one was Beyond Zork, because I had a big pack of all the Zork games. I thought it might have been the FMV one, but that's Return to Zork.
Okay, it is one of the last games in the Infocom Zork series, or one of the last games that Infocom fans consider to be official, according to Wikipedia, which is the sole arbiter of truth in the 21st century.
Oh, I think I know the one. It's still text, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. The one that's not Zork Zero.
Moriarty's first game with visuals, I believe. I think,
which is interesting to get your start in that world and then go on to make a game like Loom, which does something that no text adventure could do, which is like build puzzles around music.
What did he do after Loom?
He did The Dig.
He ran for Congress and won. No, I don't know. He did Forge, which was just a pitch, according to Wikipedia. How do you have just pitches? How do you, like,
yeah, that doesn't count.
Somebody's works, the complete works of so-and-so, like he did a pitch for a game called Forge.
The reason Forge matters is because some fans took the script and made a fan game. And so it's a fan sequel to Loom, which is actually excellent. It's a very well-made lovingly made fan game. And it's the sad thing about it is that Forge was not completed. Only episode 1 of Forge is available. But I mean, the pitch kind of counts.
I mean, yeah, definitely a Loom fan was like, Forge counts, it's a thing. Get it out there.
He did another pitch for fans of pitches called The Fold. This is not a pitch, but Wikipedia says it's unpublished, called Young Indiana Jones at the World's Fair, which sounds fantastic. And then in The Dig, 5 years after Loom, he's credited for additional story. So,
as we explained on the Dig
LucasArts'
thing,
career was Loom,
Dig really took it out of him. I don't know if he,
And according to Wikipedia, he made a game called Lodestar: The Legend of Tully Bodine for a company called Rocket Science Games.
I've got to know what this is.
I've never heard of that in my life.
It looks like it's about space trains, which I approve of. It was released in 94, so after he did his, probably The Dig was in development for so long, who knows when he contributed that. But it sounds like he's a kind of guy who was at a lot of different places because he was really smart and he made 4 games. So that's interesting.
It's worth, going off on just, this game is made, basically with EGA graphics, and it really pushes the, palette, through the use of dithering, which is really nice.
There was a re-release on CD with full voice acting, if memory serves.
Yes, there is the, it's like a VGA version with CD, audio, and stuff, and it's generally considered to be the worst version.
Yeah, I seem to remember they changed some of the dialogue.
Well, it's funny you should bring that up, actually, because there's a guy literally last week who made a essentially ROM hack that combines the PC version and the FM Towns version to sort of make an ideal version, according to feedback from the fans, so it's very timely.
For some reason, what springs out in my memory is that there's a scene in the original EGA version where the main character's nanny gets turned into a swan before everyone else. And she has a line where she says, "My destiny is in your hands." And the 3 other hooded guys who are in charge of the island and who are about to turn into swans say, "Our hands are empty." And I remember that line because I thought it was pretty well written. And then I was playing the CD version and that line just isn't there.
It's in your hands. And they're like, thanks. I mean, it really misses something, I think. It's not quite all there. Let's rank this one. Let's rank it.
Alrighty.
It's a little trickier, this one, isn't it? Because it's...
I mean, it's not a huge milestone in gaming, but it is such a interesting game.
I think it's probably a top 60 game for me. And the reason for it is it tries so much in terms of... Well, first of all, in terms of visual, it pushes the envelope for the time. It pushes the envelope in storytelling.
How much does it being too easy condemn it? This is, after all, a list of top games.
If easiness and beatability counted, then Tic-Tac-Toe would not be currently ranked at number 1. Oh, wait a second. Oh, my God. Okay, never mind. We haven't done that one yet.
Oh, goodness. I really hope no one tries to throw that one at us. Just something complete, that game with boxes where you draw boxes. Do that one.
It's totally broken, and if you know what you're doing, you can't lose.
But I think being easy is to the game's overall benefit because it's one of the few games from its time which I think you can actually approach now without too much work.
I guess my point was, if it is the story that makes it, could it have just been a book or a cartoon?
I mean, you got solving the puzzles, the knowing the spells or the spell songs or whatever they're called. Is that really as satisfying as I'm going to use the granola bar on the canary?
I think part of the thing that this
you just made me remember that there is actually a puzzle in Phantasmagoria 2 where you use a granola bar.
Yes, that's right. You got to get out from under the couch.
This scares me. Sometimes I wonder, how much of what I say I'm just remembering pretty much exactly from some game I played years ago and forgot about.
What's the name of that hamster?
It's called Blob.
Blob, yes.
And it's not a hamster, it's a rat. And it makes me think that if you say any object in the world, it's probably been an inventory item in some adventure game.
But I think what's really cool, we didn't quite mention this, is there are a handful of optional things in this game. You get a spell that lets you die things, and you can use that on things that you don't have to die, and there's a couple of spells that you can get a little bit of extra scenes and stuff. If you fill if you fill the goblet with liquid, you get a little bit of an extra scene where a character talks a little bit about the goblet itself, and you don't have to do that. I think that'd be really cool if it had a little bit more of that, more fun stuff to mess around with.
More goblet chat.
Well, yeah, because it doesn't have tons and tons of dialogue. This one, in a lot of other games of its era, you get to exhaust a different thing. Yeah.
Yeah, that's the risk you're taking when you create like a really intricate original world. Is like, what if nobody cares? And I think that Loom does like rise above like that issue. I'm not saying it's not like nobody should care, but you know what I mean? That's the risk you're making is like, to you, it feels really original and unique because you're the guy who created it. But what if everybody else just yawns? Like, you never know, like with these things. But I do think that Loom, sticks in people's minds more than a lot of other, more than the Dig, I would say, which is like a more substantive game. But
the Dig.
But that you don't finish because it's just unbearable at a certain point.
The Loom does have basically the end of Loom is now buy the sequel, and they forgot to make it, so that was a bit of a pain in the ass. But
was that going to be the Forge or the Fold?
The Forge.
There's sort of closure at the end of Loom. It's just let's just turn into swans and abandon the universe.
Hey, that sounds like a great idea. Yeah.
I didn't have any choice in this whole human being thing. Yeah.
I mean, maybe. I'm thinking. I think it's maybe top 150. I'm kind of feeling not like at 150. I mean, like.
Where's Full Throttle?
Full Throttle. That was
150 actually. Whoa.
Yeah.
Is it 150?
Definitely better than Full Throttle, I'd say.
I'd say slightly better. I would say that like you're not getting like the full like LucasArts adventure game experience with Loom. I think you're getting a thing that could have grown into something much better. Yeah, but
getting the Brian Moriarty experience.
Yeah, you're getting the experience of a guy who made one other game in his career after this. So take that as you will. Like, I think he's like a high concept guy who like had trouble convincing people to turn his concepts into games, which is a shame.
I think with the Dig, especially, I know this. LucasArts kind of chickened out. He was kind of going like, "We're gonna do this and this and this," and then at some point they were like, "No, let's not do that. Let's fire you and get someone else to write this."
What if it was a world where all the magic and knowledge in the universe was communicated through crossword puzzles? Think about it. Think about it.
Oh goodness, that's okay. Well, let's I think we'll push it up a little bit. Yeah.
Well, let's narrow down the space it can fit in. Sam & Max Hit the Road is at 119. So is it better than Sam & Max Hit the Road?
Yeah.
Okay, let's look at Deadly Premonitions then. That's at 114.
Okay, it's got to go below Deadly Premonition.
I disagree. I think that Deadly Premonition is a very interesting game as well, but I do think that Loom is a more coherent package, and it's also not bug-ridden.
Well, yes.
Yeah, but people remember playing Deadly Premonition, whereas I think there's a lot of stuff about Loom that
I think the ending to Loom is actually sticks in your head quite strongly because not just because it isn't quite a resolution, but because it is kind of just this whoa, wow, that happened. Oh, okay, that's
continuing with the LucasArts theme, Maniac Mansion at 89.
Yeah, it's got to be below that. It's got to be below Maniac Mansion.
Okay, Easy, Sonic Adventure, Ape Escape.
Every time somebody just reads 5 games in a row off our list, I'm like, this podcast is bullshit. What are we talking about? This is a terrible idea. Nobody should be doing this. Why does anybody care? Okay, so I've got to. Look, I hate Crash Bandicoot 2, so I want to put anything above it. But then again, that game is just way overranked. So, and yet somehow its position is scientifically accurate. Don't ask me how this works.
Just arbitrarily
of Olympus at 108. God, I don't make one recording and just all hell breaks loose.
I wasn't
just arbitrarily say
that one.
Arbitrary positioning between EG and Sonic Adventure. How about that?
Right.
Where's that?
At 93, 94.
Sonic Adventure. Where did that? Oh man. So just all kinds of unpleasant flashbacks. Okay. All right.
I think that's fair.
It's got to be above Sonic Adventure. Come on.
I guess. All right. So let me just.
Loom is a game you can get something out of now. Who's going to play Sonic Adventure now?
Actually,
nobody.
No.
Nobody will.
Caught me out. I only last played it because we had to.
Yeah, exactly. Whereas Loom is like a game that I feel like returning to now after listening to people sing its praises. So that's where it goes, right below EG, right above Sonic Adventure. That puts it at number 94, I believe.
Yeah.
And thanks, everybody, and we'll see you next time. That's all for this episode. Special thanks goes out to our lovely co-hosts and compatriots, our booking agent Jeff Rude, our theme song MC Norm, check him out at Normally Retro on Twitter, and our technical assistant, video editor, and scriptwriter Ed Burns. You can support this podcast by making a small monthly donation at patreon.com/HG101. I know, I did. By subscribing to the HG101 YouTube channel, and by following at GC9X and at HG_101 on Twitter. You can also hang out with us at our Discord channel. It's at bit.ly/HD Discord. But most importantly, help us spread the love of games by getting on iTunes, subscribing to HG101, and giving us a 5-star review. Do it because you like us and you want us to succeed. Until next time, keep keeping it real.